fascinated whether anyone who understands what's happened to you guys with this is not mystified by it. Like, of course, you can just think, look, I can't think about that because it's too gone. It's too weird. If I really thought about it, it would just blow my picture of the world totally to pieces. And I think that this story is like that. It's like, if you just really think about what the hell is going on there, it's just everything starts shredding and the walls start melting, and it's like, what the hell is happening? Um, and not everyone's going to be willing to go there for sure, but I think a lot of people will.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, a place for workers with earbuds who are tired of letting others read and think on their behalf, slipstreaming our way into an understanding of the situation that short-circuits the deadlocks of our moment.
So, Nick, I wanted to sort of switch from the whole topic of the KJV and canonicity and homeschool, and maybe we could just take a minute here to share the news. I mean, this isn't like new news, like you already heard the news, but like it's worth going over it again. And that is that we published or tried to publish a book. How long ago, Anne? Was it like a week and a half ago at this point?
Yeah. About a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and it's called On the Left's Response to Charlie Kirk. And basically this book has, let's see, I don't know, a good handful of authors. What is it, like 12 or 14? It's got a bunch of authors, and they're across the political spectrum. So it's not just like a post-left book. It's not like a right-wing book. It's got quite a few people who are of various tendencies of the left, who are critical of the left, but also it's got pieces that are just reflecting on the general culture of censorship. For instance, we have an anonymous professor in there who's talking about how both the left and the right at this point are suppressing free speech in academia. But the instigating event that we're trying to use as a springboard into deeper conversations was the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And that book has been blocked by Amazon, and some people go, oh, well, of course, who cares? Because they already know that Amazon's woke or whatever, which is, by the way, not obvious to me. Just because they might be a little woke in the actual warehouses or whatever, that doesn't mean that you should assume the direct publishing service would be. And I'm not even sure that this is a wokeness thing. I don't think it's about a left position or a right position on the culture war. I think it's just like a corporate thing. But Anne, what would you want to, what kind of maybe you could like lay out the chronological details a little bit more, because I just kind of gave some broad overview, but
yeah. So the way that the KDP publishing platform works is you submit your cover, you fill in all the details, you submit your manuscript, and then you set the prices, you click publish, and then Amazon takes up to 72 hours to review it. And in the past, like with some of our other anthologies, underground theory anthologies, the book has been approved within 24 hours, and then it's live. And with this one, we got an email, instead of saying your book is approved and live, saying your book has been blocked. And the only reasoning it gave was it may cause a dissatisfying customer experience. And we're like, interesting.
Wow, that's wild language. A
Yeah,
dissatisfying customer experience.
Yeah, that was it. And then on the actual KDP platform, it showed the status of the book, like big letters, blocked, and we now can't even access the back end. So all the information we put in the description, like we're basically locked out of that book information that we uploaded to the platform. Of course, we have the manuscript and everything saved elsewhere. So we get that email.
Right.
2 days later, they send a follow-up email reminding us that, like, after a thorough review of the content, your book has been blocked because it has caused a dissatisfying customer experience. So it went from it may cause to now it has caused. And I'm like, what do you mean? The book isn't available. No one's read it. So we got that email. And then another 2 or 3 days later, we get one more email telling us that our KDP account has been temporarily suspended. So now we can't even access all of our other books. Like, you try to log in, it's like your account is suspended because we have content that goes against the guidelines, the community guidelines, and we have offensive content so it was saying, in order to reinstate your account, you have to email us saying, I have read the terms and conditions, or I have read the community guidelines and agree to unpublish anything that violates these rules. And I'm like, okay, I'll do this because we need to be able to access our account. But also, Amazon, the book isn't published. Like, what are you doing? So I wasn't sure if there's just some automatic AI system, like, going through these steps, keep flagging things, or if Dave was like, well, maybe there's a person, approving these decisions. It was a weird thing. It wasn't just like, oh, it's blocked, and then that was it. It kept, like, disciplining us.
I mean, it's so mind-melting. I mean, I've heard a version of it before in much less detail, so I've been a little bit prepared. But I'm absolutely flabbergasted on so many levels by this story. It's obviously, I really thought we were beyond this. This is like something from the very worst depths of the whole kind of crazy mind control culture that, I mean, I'm not going to try and say when it peaked, 2017, 2018, something like that, but it's just like incredible. It's so incredible. I would have to suspect, and maybe this is just because I'm paranoid, that it's a rogue person who is so pissed off about the current trends in the world that they are just like lashing out in this insane fashion, quasi random fashion. But I've got no basis on that other than my prejudices.
Right.
It's utter madness. It's utter madness. And I so thought we were beyond this. I so thought we were beyond anything remotely like this. That I'm stunned. I'm stunned by it.
I will just say, to that hypothesis, there's a strong possibility that what I'm about to say does not in any way debunk it. And I'll say why in a second. But we have had at least 3 different names respond to our appeals. And 2 of the initial emails just said Amazon content review team, but then specific ones, it's like this one name that is 5 syllables long, and it's definitely Indian in origin. I have no idea how to pronounce it. But then there's another name that's as normal to the American ear as Becky. So we really have a weird mixture of names signing off on these messages. The reason that doesn't debunk what you're saying, though, is because, as I already said with Anne, like, if AI flags this, and then flagged content goes to review for a single person who's sitting there eating potato chips and listening to music, and then they just take a quick glance at it and they go, oh, I hate that, and then they reject it out of hand. It could be that instead of having to type out a rejection, AI does the rest of the work and then signs off with a randomly generated name. Right? So there's no way, like there could be a person there, it could be AI, it could be a mixture of AI and a person. But if we were to just be strictly literal, it sounds like there's several people who keep looking at this and responding in agreement that this is bad and we violated something.
I mean, one of the reasons it's so hard to begin to make sense of it is that there's obviously much edgier stuff out there on Amazon,
right,
than this volume. So, I mean, I had no sense at all, really, before hearing this story that Amazon was the cutting edge of this kind of censorious mind control culture. I thought it was relatively loose, just based on the fact that I know is trading through Amazon. I mean, I don't want to name stuff because I don't want to set off alarms and people start hunting it down. But I mean, there's things that I think would definitely have been in deep trouble in the depths of woke mind control that are now being shipped through Amazon completely easily.
Exactly.
Which makes this case seem really very, very hard to make sense of.
I mean, there's not even any slurs or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, but I know that you can publish slurs on Amazon KDP. So that's interesting. So it's like they're saying that it violates their content guidelines, which, by the way, if you look at their guidelines, it does include stuff like, no hate speech, which obviously that's expanded to include so many things that nonetheless gets through. Right. So if I say this person, I'm not going to use the word because I don't want to get banned on YouTube or whatever, but let's just say this person calls that other person the F word, or that you say that person called that person the F word. Like, oh, that person's a real jerk. He called that person the F word. What a jerk. Yeah. You can still get banned for that, as I just, proved here on YouTube, but also it could technically violate stuff on KDP, but KDP does not block stuff like that, right? Even so, it's like by most woke standards that would be blocked, but KDP does not block that, right? So I also had this assumption, like you, Nick, that this was just kind of that Amazon was kind of just like, yeah, publish what you want, guys.
I mean, part of the whole context of this, if we're panning out a little bit, is that one whole set of responses to this story is like, well, you've got to go somewhere else. And then, I mean, obviously, in terms of just, if it's just saying something to the world, there are lots of other places you can go that I think have an excellent standard now of free speech. I mean, like, if I'm just ignore that whole X thing, because it doesn't really do long content, I think, probably that well, but Substack seems to me like extraordinarily open, liberal, in the best sense,
right?
Medium. But more narrowly, publishing, Amazon's monopoly is so crazy.
Right.
I mean, there's nowhere you can go, obviously, is there, to say, hey, well, Amazon are a bunch of jerks, so we're gonna take it to somewhere else that also has a thriving ebook publishing and marketing operation. I mean, I don't think there is such a thing, is there? There isn't this other option. And so that just brings me back to a whole set of questions like, isn't that monopolistic power entirely dependent upon maintaining extremely vigorous liberal standards? Like, if people were going to take this story and their reputation of Amazon was going to be based on this story, everyone is going to say, you have to root around those assholes. I mean, they're just like what you're just like giving the North Koreans kind of final say on what you can publish. It's completely insane. And so Amazon has to see that. I mean, I've no idea. Like Bezos, whatever you think of the guy, I'm not a particular fan, but I'm not a particular enemy either. I hadn't got him on my list as someone who was engaged in this massive political censorship operation under the guise of doing business. I thought he was an opportunistic capitalist. And this is not opportunistic capitalism. This is something completely nuts.
Exactly. Yeah, and on the level of mind control and like this idea of like, aren't we beyond that 2017 through 2018 mind control thing? Like, I do want to get into this topic of like, what does this tell us about the cathedral? But really quick, just for people's sort of clarity on the situation, I've put a couple videos out so far about this, but I haven't read the email that I sent them. So when Anne sent them the agreement, that just so that we could get our account reinstated, it's like we were basically saying, yes, we've read the community guidelines and we agree to not publish anything that violates them. But then once they sent us the email that reinstated us, I sent them this email where I said, "Dear so-and-so," the last person who had emailed, "and Amazon Content Review Team, thank you for reviewing my appeal and reinstating my KDP account. I appreciate the opportunity to continue publishing and am committed to ensuring all my titles fully comply with your content guidelines and terms and conditions. To help me maintain good standing and avoid any future issues, could you please provide more details on the specific aspects of my content that were found to violate the guidelines? I reviewed the guidelines at link and believe my book aligns with them. But without knowing the exact concerns, it's challenging to make informed adjustments. For reference, the title in question is On the Left's Response to Charlie Kirk, which discusses political responses without promoting hate speech, illegal activities, or other prohibited elements. If this was a human review, I'd value any insights to better understand the process. Please let me know if there's additional information I can provide. Thank you for your assistance. Best regards." That's the, first of all, most polite email I've ever sent anyone in my entire life. And this was their response. "Hello. As per our policy, we reserve the right not to disclose any type of information we consider sensitive data. We are unable to elaborate further on specific details regarding our terms and conditions beyond what is available in the following help pages. Regards."
I mean, the madness is just slathered upon madness to an extent that is completely unfathomable. I mean, what is going on there? What is it? Just that these people are just lazy hacks, maybe outsourced lazy hacks, and this is their way of saying, I can't be fucked to actually help you here? Or is it something more sinister going on? Like, but Yeah, I mean, this is it becomes close to a definitional reign of terror at the point where people are denied an explanation of what it is that they're being persecuted for. What is the purpose of that persecution? It's like it just creates generalized terror. It's just like you're supposed to be in a mindset where I don't even know what I'm not allowed to say. You know, a kind of paralyzing preemptive anxiety that you might be somehow doing something wrong. It's completely illegitimate what is happening here at such a deep level. It's really shocking.
Mhm. So this would be the segue into the question about the cathedral that I have for you. and you know, we were talking about this a little bit, and I told her, you know, you don't have to do any preparation for this because you've already thought a lot about the PMC, and the PMC is like a good jumping off point to then talk about the cathedral, right? The cathedral could be thought of as a certain theoretical a way of going deeper into the conditions of, you know, what people are trying to get at when they say the professional managerial class. Would you agree with that?
Um, I would directionally agree with that,
Okay.
but my sense of the cathedral is the fact it's not being read deeply enough. I think it's a really important deep conceptual innovation that has happened. Yeah, I'm attributing all of this to Mold. This is Moldbug's cathedral,
Right.
and it's like it's a kind of one of the axial concepts in his whole arc, and his whole arc, I think, is there's serious intellectual greatness involved in that unqualified reservations arc. To a degree, I don't even think Yarvin himself gets. In terms of what he's done afterwards, in terms of what how he seems to self-understand what he's done, I don't think he realizes really how important what he's done is. Um, and so preparing for this whole, I completely unrealistically got an agenda here that would like take us through the whole history of political economy till we get to the cathedral, and then go through the history of modern Western religion until we get back to the cathedral. And it's like this concept is this critical concept at the conflux of all the important traditions, the theological and economic and intellectual, political, economic traditions of modernity come together in this notion. So that's why I'm reluctant to just say, you know, we know cathedral, we know what those assholes are, they're the PMC. I mean, that is kind of true, but it's like the magnificence of the whole thing is really lost there, I think.
So I guess
So I realize this is
okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no. I've blurbed.
Well, no. I
You
was just gonna, I guess, ask, because I'm pretty unfamiliar with your conception of the cathedral, like as it relates to the PMC, and so maybe you could just explain a little bit more for anyone who will be listening, and obviously for me, about kind of, yeah, a little bit more about that distinction and what that means to you.
Well, my comparative blindness on this is about the notion of the PMC, which in a very impressionistic way I see as also arising in a late stage of this long, deep tradition of political economy. And so what the PMC are is a group of people, and the cathedral maybe is a group of people, but I don't know whether that is really the best way of conceiving it. I think we will do some cycling on this, because it's the whole thing is actually deep and intriguing. But I think if I could just do an absolute just race through political economy little thing first, that maybe serves a little bit for the PMC, but is, I think, indispensable for the cathedral. When the first thing to say is there used to be this thing, political economy, and political economy is like a science, it's a discipline. It's an intellectual structure. And you, of course, for the people doing political economy, it's also a thing, but that's certainly not how it's remembered. How it's remembered as being a particular intellectual edifice that crucially collapsed. So it's an English language phenomenon, and because the French prototype for political economy, the physiocrats, political economy emerges by basically distancing itself from the physiocrats, and retrospectively, in ways that Marx found very convenient, political economy says, oh, the physiocrats are intellectual apologists for feudalism, because they're basically saying that all wealth comes from agricultural production, that the people who are feeding the nation are the foundation of the wealth of the nation, and everything on top of that, you can have artisans, you can have merchants, you can have higher level trades and activities, but all those people have to be fed. So the people feeding the nation are supporting the whole of the economic activity of the nation. Political economy begins with a notion that is associated much more with what comes at the end of the traditional political economy, which is basically labor. It's like the political economists do two things, maybe more, but two that are really, I think, indispensable for this conversation. That they say that social coordination is decentralized and the agent of social coordination is, as in Adam Smith's sense, the invisible hands, I would say. And then they say all value, the edifice of value doesn't rest upon production of food, particularly, it rests on labor. And then we get the culmination, in a certain sense, the culmination, or as the right will say, sorry, 1 second. For the right, what Marx does is basically brings the notion of the labor theory of value, which is essential to the Marxist, pre-leftist traditional political economy to the point of crisis. And he does it by this crucial move, which is distinguishing labor and labor power. And he says, if you take the liberal, the pre-leftist theory of political economy seriously, all value is produced by labor, and labor is wage labor, so people are paid for their labor. And therefore, profit is impossible unless this notion of labor has to be systematically broken. Like, if the value of anything is the amount of labor that's being put to it, and laborers are paid for their labor, then the laborers get paid for everything they do, and all revenue from the market goes to labor. So where is capital in this at all? It doesn't exist. It's mathematically annihilated. So Marx says this crucial move that wherever you are ideologically, I think has to be understood as being of vast importance, is to say, no, labor is being used in these two very different senses, and the consistent sense of it is that the value of anything is based on the amount of labor that has been put into it, and that also applies to the worker. And so the worker is paid according to the amount of labor that is put into reproducing labor power. That's to say, you can't fairly, according to this, as Marx's bourgeois liberal economic calculus, you cannot fairly pay wages that are unable to reproduce labor. So if you do that, you would just lead to human extinction. You have to pay, just like for anything else, you have to pay for the amount of labor that goes into this. And to have labor power, labor goes into it. People have to be born, they have to be fed as children, they have to be to some degree educated, all of this kind of thing, and they then have to feed themselves, and they have to support a family, and they have to have a house or whatever of some condition. And all of these are costs for the reproduction of labor power. And that is what is meant as wages are directed to that. They're directed to treating labor as any other commodity, that you pay for it what is required to reproduce it, based on the amount of labor that goes into it, the amount of labor that goes into reproducing labor power. But that is totally different to paying labor the amount of labor value it produces, the amount of labor it can do. The amount of labor that a laborer can do is a very distinct quantity to the amount of labor that is required to reproduce that labor. And between those two different uses of the word of labor and paying for labor, between labor and labor power, is what Marx calls surplus value, that he sees as the key to unlocking the entire dynamic of capitalism. And of course, all his work basically is about capitalism. He has a few tangential remarks about feudalism and a few tangential remarks about post-capitalism things, but Marx is an analysis of capitalism, and this is the key and the core of all of this, things. So this is his huge move. And so there's two things I just have to say immediately then to justify why I'm talking about this at all. So there's two things happen here. One is that actual liberal capitalist economics then sidesteps Marx. They say, oh, the so-called liberal tradition of political economy was wrong. that the labor theory of value is wrong. What Marx has done, understood in arguments, is proven he has done a reductio ad absurdum of the labor theory of value, and we have to move somewhere else. And then you go into different things, but on a purely theoretical level, what you go into is Austrian economics. Austrian economics is capitalist economics, as opposed to obviously then Marxist communist economics. So that's the first thing that needs to be said. So you've got the Marxist tradition, the political economy collapses. And why does political economy collapse? It collapses because Marx introduces this distinction between base and superstructure. And his critique of political economy, as he defines his own work, is to say, look, what political economy isn't actually a real science of economics, because I've shown how confused it is. And by actually discovering the theory of surplus value, discovering surplus value, I've demolished it. I've demolished it in a way on its own grounds. I made an imminent critique of it. And what I've discovered is that political economy was just bourgeois economics. And what I mean by bourgeois economics is that it is a superstructure of a base that is economic and is based on class interest, and that class interest is based on the bourgeoisie or capitalist class. And so the base superstructure distinction is that everything that is not the economy, that's to say, crucially, law, politics, and religion, is just stacked on top of the economy, and neatly, it's again, we were talking about things being harmonic in relation to geometry. It's harmonic with the economy. So therefore, there's such a thing when we're talking about a capitalist society rather than just a capitalist economy. We're talking about a capitalist superstructure on a capitalist industrial base, and that superstructure will just be harmonic with the capitalist, the class interests of the bourgeoisie at the economic level. And so at this point, political economy has been destroyed, because political economy is saying that there's a political, that politics and the economy is an integrated thing. And what Marx is saying, no, it isn't. It's like you break it. You've got the economy, that's the base, that's the fundamental thing. And everything else is superstructure stacked harmonically upon the base. So you don't need political economy at all. You just need proper economics and then an ideological critique of the superstructure that follows upon that economic form. Okay, I'm going to get out of this monologue mode really quickly because we're almost there. We're almost at the thing. So Marx doesn't say much about religion, but we have to at some point. But he certainly, I think, understands that Reformed Christianity, Protestantism, and liberalism are the same historical event. They're the same thing seen in different aspects. And because religion for him is just this stacked up harmonic superstructure, he doesn't talk about religion a lot. He thinks if you're talking about capitalism, that's the important thing, and then you can just assume it's going to be capitalist religion, because religion convenient to capitalism, just as it's going to be politics convenient to capitalism, it's going to be a legal system convenient to capitalism. All the superstructure is going to do what capitalism and bourgeoisie wanted to do. So just to pause on that for 1 second, very, very quickly on the other side, Moldbug. So we've seen that what happens is that Austrian economics peels off and insists on doing capitalist economics. it has its own criticism of Marx, very interesting. We probably don't want to get caught up in that, but just to say, it jettisons the labor theory of value. It sees where the labor theory of value goes. It doesn't want to do that anymore. It's got its own theory of value. And obviously, as politics, it becomes libertarianism. So there's, again, two things that I think need to be said about this, even in maximum speed mode. The first thing is, okay, what's really weird about this is that on a Marxist viewpoint, libertarianism would be actually the superstructure of a capitalist society. It is capitalist economics. It's like, obviously, if the superstructure is supposed to just harmonically support the interests of the dominant class of the economic base, which is the bourgeoisie, then its economics should be the prevailing social economics. But instead, libertarianism has been totally marginalized. And Austrian economic has been almost totally marginalized. It just feeds in indirectly. It's been completely crushed under the dominant tradition of non-Marxist economics in the West, which is Keynesianism, which again is something be interesting to talk about. But Keynesianism and neoliberalism later on a Keynesian foundation, all of that has nothing to do with Austrian economics, and it's nothing to do with libertarianism. So why isn't the capitalist superstructure actually capitalist in orientation? Why isn't it actually that capitalist modes of thought are actually dominant in a supposedly capitalist society? So that's the question. And then what Moldbug does is he says he does something to Austrian economics very comparable, I think, in magnitude and importance and intensity to what Marx does to the tradition of political economy. And he does it also by dividing a basic notion. He starts with the whole Austrian analysis of property, and he breaks it too. And he breaks it by saying you have to realistically divide property into secondary property, which is actually the only thing that the libertarians and Austrians are talking about, and primary or sovereign property. So primary or sovereign property is for Moldbug what surplus value is for Marx. It's the discovery that breaks the whole consensus of the regime, intellectual regime that he's engaging with. And I'll just like draw this to a preliminary conclusion, and we'll come back in a zigzag fashion with you guys engaged. But just to say, okay, sovereign property is a cathedral. That's how you get to the cathedral, through this whole route, this whole path he's taken. It's like you have this thing that you reach in the end that is the explanation. It doesn't work as a Marxist superstructure at all because it's completely dominant over the economy. It's not like a harmonic superstructure that just does what the capitalist class wants. We've seen that what the capitalist class want the superstructure to do is not being done. The superstructure has gone in a completely different direction to what the bourgeoisie, based on their Marxian class interests, would want it to do. It's gone to another place. And the cathedral is that other place. The cathedral is the transcendental property structure. It's the structure that secondary property is property understood as working within the rules of a particular game that is set by the laws and regulations and mores of a society. Primary property is what allows you to actually structure the game. It sets the rules of the game. It's at the level of legislation of the game. And by legislation, I don't mean that law is actually supreme in the cathedral. It isn't. Law is at an intermediate stage, but it's certainly at a stage that is sovereign, comparatively sovereign relative to the economic realm, narrowly defined. Okay, so that's a big dump. So I'm sorry, I apologize for that. But that's just to say this is why like a narrow sociological definition of like, oh, the cathedral is just the PMC. Is I think unsatisfactory, because the cathedral is this crucial notion. The cathedral is sovereign property. It's the highest level of social dominance. And so if you're using kind of categories that sound vaguely Marxist, as if they're all just kind of swimming up out of the economy, then that's not going to get it at all, because the flow of power works in completely the opposite direction. The economic classes that are just pursuing the rules of that society, the rules of that society are being set by the cathedral. So it's not by playing the game really well that you get to dominate in society and make the cathedral what you want it to be. That's an inversion. Moldbach is saying it's rather that the cathedral is what decides the rules that society at the economic level is operating under. Okay, I really have shut up for a minute now. So
No,
are you guys still alive?
That was great. Yeah, we're here. I knew that Dave had a follow-up question, so I wonder if he's having mic problems or something. So I'll turn it over to him. Where'd he go? Dave? Yeah, mic problem.
So maybe we should talk about something while we're waiting for Dave to
Yeah.
recover his mic problem.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think because Dave is the one who brought up the PMC and the cathedral in the first place. I think as it relates to this Amazon issue, or at least it kind of stemmed from that.
That was the trigger for it, for sure. I can see that.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean it's an interestingly complicated case, and it would be good, like
Test.
Yarvin is much
There we
more
go.
like.
We can hear you.
Oh, he's back.
Mhm.
All right. There we go.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, but what were you going to say about Yarvin? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say his general mode is very historical. So he will tend to have, there'll be a lot of historical detail that like he's a kind of historian at a high level when he's in his most comfortable mode. And so he would I probably find this Amazon case very interesting because it's so concrete. If you're saying, because obviously there's a mode that he would see as obsolete of discussing this, which is Amazon is a massive capitalist enterprise. It has a lot of power because it's very rich. And therefore, it acts like an asshole. I'm sure you could be a bit more subtle about it than that, but that's the basic gist of it. But that obviously doesn't get even remotely close to, well, what is the agenda here for what's happening in the case we're talking about? Because surely no one thinks this is the strategy here is about profit maximization. That would be the most basic one. Is it how could this be about profit maximization? Or also, to take it up a level, to go meta, to say, oh, this is somehow about entrenching the power of the bourgeoisie, of whatever we're going to say, the effective capitalist class is somehow consolidated through this act. I mean, I don't find that even remotely suggestively persuasive at all. So I think we're sort of saying instead, well, why is Amazon acting like the conduit for a certain set of approved opinions and beliefs? And those approved opinions and beliefs, there will be people who will say, oh, still try to be funding Marxist about it and saying somehow these approved opinions and beliefs are serving some traditional Marxist notion of bourgeois class interest. I mean, I find that entirely unpersuasive. So I think you start going up this stack of what was supposedly the harmonic superstructure. And, at one level, you've got all of this just neat, clunky capitalist stuff to do with property. But property is actually, liberal civilization has not done well at locking down property at all. And when it tries to philosophically, it's very unpersuasive. I mean, the whole Lockean theory of property is probably where we would end up if we were going to be in the philosophical tradition. And it's extremely, again, unpersuasive, I would say. So you go with a bit more sophistication to law, and you say, look, what property is what you can do to legally protect your claims. You have property over something effectively. If your property rights are violated, you can take it to court and win. So so actually then property becomes this legal infrastructure. So now we're heading already up into the superstructure. But then people say, well, but where does law come from? And again, I'm very sympathetic to common law traditions, which basically say it's a spontaneous thing, maybe even a spontaneous ethnic thing. But law is historically overridden common law by statute law, and statute law is legislated in some kind of parliament or political assembly, and that parliament or political assembly is dictated by political process, and therefore you have, in theory at least, politics being supreme over law. Like if you win a political victory, you can rewrite laws, scrap laws, legislate. So the law is downstream of politics. And then, so you've then got, you can try to be, as I think the world is moving in this direction, is trying to be as disillusioned and realist about power, politics, as it can be. And it's like Mao's, famous dictum, power comes out of the barrel of a gun. Like, end of the road, you have power if you can compel people to behave in your way using the threat of violence.
Right.
And that politics at the end of the road is that. But then it's like, well, why do the people with the guns do what you want? What actually coordinates the people with the guns to point them in the politically approved direction? And I think it's only then that we get to the top of this. Lots of inverted commas, superstructure stack, that they have a religion that is pointing their guns in the right direction. Like in Mao's case, it's like eschatological Chinese communism. In the case of Western politics, it's like there is a religion that is coordinating political power. And that, again, we're back on a sort of different tack. We're back again with the cathedral. The cathedral is an unacknowledged state church. It's a religious institution. So, so with the Amazon thing, what is going on there? Religion. There is a religion that is passing down through these levels, religion down through politics, through law, into economic power, and the only real level at which it becomes fully intelligible what is happening there is that there is a religious event, that book, that product was in some sense heretical. It was a religious offense, because it's not an economic offense. This is why the thing that this ridiculous thing, it might lead to some level of reader discomfort. I mean, what that's implying is, like, as a business, we've come to the conclusion that you might lose us money by upsetting our customers. It's pretending to be doing economics. And it's farcical because it's, of course, not economics. No one could believe that putting up that book on Kindle is going to have some economic cost to Amazon. And that as a business, a neutral, just completely profit-oriented business, it made the decision it did as a profit-maximizing thing. I mean, I'm sorry, maybe there is someone out there who wants to defend that. To me, it's an absolute insane, lunatic suggestion. So what is going on? It's not just that they're obeying the law. Amazon isn't under some legal obligation to squash that book. Of course not. In fact, we've got X and we've got Substack and we've got relatively free media now, shows that that's absolute bullshit as well. There's clearly no legal compulsion for them to act like that. Is it? So then we're going up the next level. Is it politics? And then as soon as we ask, well, if it's politics, well, whose politics? What is guiding the politics?
Right. It's not recognizable as anyone's politics either.
Except the politics of a religious movement.
I mean, could if it's the politics of a religious movement and we just don't tend to see it as a religion or as a politics, is the thing underneath that we're trying to get at here, is it something like a sort of, I mean, this isn't it. It's not, here's the thing. People, I think they've grown numb to it over the last 10 years. And to a certain extent, especially radicals, they seem the most pacified when it comes to this stuff, because, you know, their assessment is the system is so far gone anyway. So of course this happens. But from, I think our standpoint, you use the word flabbergasted. I think we agree, because our particular way of thinking about the system is, yeah, of course it's so far gone. And of course it's there's all kinds of ways that free speech is suppressed, but not this way. So for instance, YouTube, if a video gets taken down, people go, well, of course it did. You know, they care about the profit motive. At the bottom line, it's about the corporate funders for the, you know, it's the advertising revenue that they care about. They don't want to lose advertising revenue. That's why they do this. That's what people say. And so people use this to downplay, dismiss, and sort of like just, you know, live in this sort of numbness where they expect to never be able to say anything that goes off the plantation. But the thing is with this, it's like there's no advertiser revenue at stake. Right. So what is if advertiser revenue is presumed to be the sort of religious, you know, motive when it comes to something like YouTube, it's like, okay, well, we're not dealing with that. We're dealing with something else, right? Then what would that be? What is that religion? Like, what is is it the, I just don't know. Like that's part of what's driving me crazy about it. Is what is this thing that we're bumping up against? And why do some people act like they're very confident, like they know what it is? And it's like, it's not obvious at all what we're bumping up against, I don't think.
Yes, I mean, it should still have the power to surprise this thing. I mean, it's obviously difficult because of the fact that there's this whole, the notion of the cathedral now is like, where are we? 2025. So it's over 15 years old. Like it's quite a venerable notion, and it's been, I don't know when it really broke out, escaped containment as a concept, but anyway, it's been around a while, and people feel very used to it, and they think they know what it means. I think perhaps somewhat lazily, and they tend to undervalue its importance. And with woke too. You know, I mean, there's this whole discourse at the moment, like, you know, woke's being put away, we're post-woke, even the left is now post-woke. They realize whatever, it's peaked, we're on the other side of it. And so when you hit this thing that is only understandable in terms of the most fanatical level of woke activism imaginable, people are just sort of stunned and confused about it. Like it shouldn't be like that now. So yes, I think that if the more people hear about this episode, the more they will be mystified about it. And it's very unlikely. I mean, I would have obviously expect this much more from YouTube, which I distrust much more than I had distrusted Amazon.
Right.
And with YouTube, again, the same thing. Like as you've said, this explanation it's about advertising revenue. Well, that's an attempt to make it all sound like we're on this Marxist plane of economic interest, but that's not explanatory. Like, why would the advertisers, judge things in the way they do? They're not judging things on economic grounds. They're judging things too on this under this hierarchical schema that culminates in the Church of Woke. It's the Church of Woke that is telling the advertisers what adverts are good and who they should advertise with, and that's setting the agenda. It's not cynical economic self-interest at all. It's completely the fact that the advertising industry has been captured and has been under religious direction. And again, it had seemed that they were beginning to recover or back away from them, which is a discussion that maybe we have to have on this too. But yes.
So when my microphone, extremely mystifying, yeah. So when my microphone was out of commission there, when you were coming to the end of your lecture, I thought I thought you all could hear me. I thought I was in the recording, but I wasn't. And I was like sitting there, throughout your lecture at a couple, moments, I was like, or so it's like, I thought I was there. And then at the end I said, this is Theory Underground. We want lectures. We want long form content. We like deep dives. And like you said, this was a really fast overview, really maybe long by typical podcast standards, but not long by TU standards at all. And so we like it. But then all of a sudden, like, you guys were like, where's Dave? And I was like, oh shit, you can't hear me. But where I was going to go with the PMC and cathedral thing, and I still want to go there. It's actually kind of like awesome that my microphone wasn't working, and then you went deeper into this before I was able to get it back. But now, and I think people will see why. But once, now that we're here, I want to say, so I think it's true that the professional managerial class, or PMC, the way that term gets used usually is just for a type of person or a person belonging to a certain type of group of people, right? And so, at the level of the name, it does just refer to a group, professionals and managers, usually considered the college educated. And I don't like that, right? I don't like that, but I do think it's a good sort of jumping off point, because when people are realizing that there are certain crises in academia, in activism, in the attention economy, a lot of the signs of these crises do kind of come from the realization, like, oh, there are people who seem to be quite confident that they are capable of speaking on everyone else's behalf and saying what's in the best interest of everyone else. And they tend to have some kind of institutional authority, or at least they seem to try to act as though they do. And that these are the gatekeepers of culture, to some extent, of media, of law, the influencers, the professors, the activists, like so their taste and their sense for what's normal, and the degree to which, when they talk about what's normal, they're not describing, they're prescribing. They're trying to force X, Y, or Z to be considered normal. They're trying to say, this is normal, this is not normal, right? It's prescriptive, right? Like they're trying to be the sort of, at the airport, the person who's waving the sticks with the lights on them, the air traffic control people out there. Like they're trying to do that for culture itself. And maybe they do it nicely. Maybe they do it like bullies. There might be a culture divide over whether it should be done nicely or as bullies. But this thing that people are trying to get at with the term PMC, I think it became popular between 2016 and 2020 because the height of this kind of mind control was, it was becoming very visible in that period. And so one of the things that I've tried to do is to take that and go deeper, looking into these three crises: the crisis of academia, the crisis of activism, the crisis of the attention economy. I call that the 3 A's. And the PMC is kind of like in all three domains for obvious reasons. And, there's one level where people can take it a little bit deeper and say that it's not about the people themselves. Like it's not about identity politics. It's not to say like, if you are college educated, your opinion is worthless. It's just to say like, generally there is this divide between those with degrees and those without degrees, and that those with degrees are trying to gatekeep discourse. But then I think that the much, much deeper level is exactly what you're getting to. And I wonder if Burnham, James Burnham, and on the other side, the left, Barbara Ehrenreich, I wonder if they fit well into it or not. I think Ehrenreich is pretty descriptive in her seminal piece that she wrote with her husband called The Professional Managerial Class, where it's just, she's just describing the fact that the class development did not go the way Marx thought it would. There was a time when it was really easy to talk about how out of all the different classes, there are obviously two major classes that are growing fast, and it's likely that they will keep growing. And that's the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. The other classes are withering away. These two classes are growing, but the proletarianization of political economy makes it likely that the proletariat will become like this sort of universal class. And it also just so happens to be the one with hands on the levers of power, in the sense that if they lock arms and step back, the world comes to a halt. Right. So it's not like when the new left comes along and say the Weather Underground and says, oh, it's the black population or the Vietnamese or the children, like they are the new, they're the new revolutionary subject because they're the most immiserated. It's no, right. What was unique about the proletariat was not immiseration. It was specifically power. It was the fact that it was growing in power, and that it's not just labor power in the sense of a commodity. It also had power. And that's because if they locked arms, as I said, and stepped back, then things actually stop. It costs the bourgeoisie millions per minute when people at a factory stop working. And so it's like, oh yeah, they actually have power, right? Whereas other immiserated minorities, for instance, if they step back, nobody cares. It doesn't actually change anything. So there was something unique at that moment. And then the thing is something between the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 20th century, something changed that made it so that was no longer plausible unless you had on like some pretty rigid, orthodox, dogmatic, Marxist or political economy sort of lenses, right? If you're looking and you're not super committed to seeing the world through the lenses of Adam Smith, Ricardo to Marx sort of spectrum, then you realize, no, there's something else going on here, because the proletariat is not growing in power. It is actually being fractured and splintered and segregated and moved out in a distributed manner across the globe. So it's not being welded together in city centers the way that Lenin describes in State and Revolution. It's the opposite. And so, for Lenin, it was like, oh, look, the cities are welding together this new class. And it's like, are you actually looking around you when you say that, Lenin, or are you just looking at books? Like, are you saying it because you want it to be true? And we know it is because he was looking at books and that he wanted it to be true, because it obviously wasn't the case in Russia because there was no proletariat, right? Or at least not to speak of. But what Ehrenreich and then also Burnham in his own sort of more neoconservative way are going to say is that what we see is the rise of a mediating class, and it's managerial in its mode. Whether we're talking about actual managers or not, it is one that seizes the means of legal control. But it's from Ehrenreich's position, it's one that just kind of sells itself to capitalists. It says, hey, you guys need us actually, because without us, you're going to have these workers striking. With us, we can keep them from doing that. Whereas I think from Burnham's standpoint, which is much more black-pilled, he's saying, no, there's something fundamentally different going on, and it actually has the power. The bourgeoisie is not the group that has the power. It's actually the people who are doing politics and law. And so I think this goes really well with everything you're saying, but I guess I'll turn it into a question by saying, do you think the cathedral was the one calling the shots also in the time that political economy was in vogue?
Actually, that's a very difficult and complicated question that I think might involve, again, some of the notorious circling back behavior. Because let me just engage with what you've been saying at an earlier stage of that.
Yeah.
Because what your narrative has consolidated my suspicion about what is going on with this notion of the PMC, which is the fact that it's an attempt to upgrade a broadly Marxist analysis by saying that what we're talking about is class interest, and we've just not understood class interest enough. There's this other class; they have their interests. It's not reducible to their interests of the classical Marxist classes. They're not acting in the interests of either the proletariat or the bourgeoisie. They have their own thing going on, but it's still material class interest, and we've seen that ultimately that is all within a tradition that has a notion of the superstructure that cannot be right or adequate. It's like you have to basically just say, no, we're just going to move the superstructure around a little bit. No, the superstructure now, it's these class interests it represents. It's still harmonic. It's still based upon this kind of economic base. We're just moving the furniture around in terms of what's happening at the level of the economic base. And I just don't think that solves the problems that we're here in this talk trying to talk about. Like, even just concretely, we can keep going back to this Amazon thing. What Amazon is doing does not make sense in terms of the class interests of the PMC any more than it makes sense in terms of the class interests of the bourgeoisie. I mean, what class interest is involved in shutting this thing down? In an act of what is actually, a translated, modulated religious horror. That's what's actually happened. And I think that you have to then go to this thing. Look, this history, modernity, can be run entirely and in parallel, actually, as religious history. And as religious history, it begins with the Reformation. The Reformation is also a media revolution. It's also Gutenberg. And there's no modernity, there's no capitalism without reformed religion. the two things are the same process. And then when we get the sociological confirmation of that in Weber, and I would say also we should never forget Sombart, which is a kind of the reorbiting Weber crucially. These things are in a deep sense right. People try to slide off it and say, oh, somehow we don't believe in Weber, what Weber discovered anymore. But Weber discovered something totally important. The spirit of capitalism, Protestantism and the spirit of capitalism is crucially important text. And Protestantism and capitalism are almost the same thing. They are aspects of the same thing. So then we get up to our PMC. Well, what are we saying about the PMC in terms of religious history? Because Moldbach, there's a lot to say about this, because he's participating in a discussion about religious history as much as anything. For Moldbach, the cathedral is a religious episode. It's a church. And we get to the cathedral through the evolution of Protestantism. And so what we're dealing with, all the works of the cathedral, is we're dealing with religious history. We're dealing with, well, what has our religious tradition become such that this is now heresy, this is now sanctity, we're approving this, we're disapproving that. This is the very highest level of sovereignty. There's nothing above it. You're not going to reduce it to class interest. You're not going to reduce it to anything else. This level of religious history is you've come to the end of the conveyor belt. And so I think, whether you're talking about Ehrenreich or Burnham or anyone, if they're implying that you're talking about class interest in some sort of ultimately Marxist sense, i.e., that this is something decided at the level of the base that is then harmonically reflected in the superstructure, you have completely lost the plot. You're completely failing to see that this is religious history. And right from the start of this religious history, it has been the religious conflict has been the crucial. It's whether if you can start it in the Anglo tradition with the Tudors, with the establishment of the Church of England, with the whole, Bloody Mary versus Elizabeth. This is what it's about. It's about the religious authority that is going to be at the top of the stack, which is what then the cathedral is our whatever postmodern version of. It's not a postmodern version of class politics. That all that class politics is downstream of this.
Yeah, this is something that I've also talked about as when we're talking about the mode of activists or of academics who are for suppressing ideas and for trying to gatekeep culture or whatever. The priest class has always done that. It's just that we have a particular kind of priest class that, because it disavows its function and role as a priest class, it does things that are sort of suicidal by more traditional instantiations, or like by the norms of one. For instance, if you think that social harmony is one of the goals of the priest class, or like one of the responsibilities proper to or emanating from that occupation, then obviously the one we have to date has lost the plot, right? It doesn't care about social harmony. Like this has nothing to do with social harmony. It has nothing to do with trying to meet people where they're at or halfway and then raise them to some higher level, right? And so I've talked about it as a problem of like the rebel priest class. It's where people who would have historically felt called to go be monks or nuns or potentially actual priests are instead, striking off to be, some kind of radical individualist bohemian, in a sort of like, like dumbed down Nietzschean vein or something.
It's interesting. Like, obviously, if you go back into this thing, the role of the religious zealot as quietist monk, it isn't really like you're not seeing the revolution in you if you're seeing that. That's when the whole system works. When you've got pre-modern tradition Catholicism, when you have the Roman Church prior to the Reformation, it can contain its bubbling confusion by the fact that it can sort of direct people implicitly into quietism, into monasticism, into these modes where they take their religious zeal out of the space of social ferment. But then when you're in the Reformation from either side, then as Moldbug says, I think this gets somewhat too complicated to go into in detail, but it's worth it to just mention, like he sees these, there's Protestantism as a zealous phenomenon, as basically indistinguishable from forms of rebellion and revolution, like the peasant rebellions immediately in Germany, obviously in the Civil War in Britain, the Puritan extreme of the Roundheads was into a form of basically just violent revolutionary communism, and reciprocally with the Jesuits. I mean, they saw themselves as being warriors. Like there was in the sort of whole fight in England over the kind of the escape from Rome, or however would put that more neutrally, is being fought with subterfuge and martyrdom on both sides, and it's a military thing. It's like it's war. So we've sort of forgotten that. I think it's like, because of the later evolution, we've forgotten that these religious questions are tied up with just extreme social tumult, and historically if pursued zealously. Like, to get back to your question about social harmony or social peace, I mean, none of these people during the 30 Years' War would have thought that social harmony was a value such that one should compromise religious integrity for. Sorry, I'm being pursued.
Excuse me. So, well, then let's see if we can. I think we'll probably have to go pretty soon. But before we do, to sort of wrap it up, to think about this as a religion, to think about, I'm trying to figure out how to even phrase the question. It's difficult because I guess when you have a religion, typically there's a pretty obvious sense for what is being valued, for what is actually sacred, as opposed to what is profane. And it's also like, you know, I think typically they make it pretty easy for you to know if you're blaspheming or practicing heresy. And I'm out here like saying to them, I don't want to be a heretic. I'm not trying to blaspheme. Tell me how to do what you want me to do, and I will do it. And they're like, that would be compromising us. That would be sensitive data. It's like, how can that be a religion? How can any religion function that way? Right? What is that?
This is very interesting. This is super interesting framing. It's true. This is super interesting framing of it. Because obviously the whole trend on the way up this was exactly to do that. You know, and you get these ridiculous things like, you get these statements even in the Smithsonian and all of these public institutions. You get these woke versions of religious sort of doctrine that is just like, you know, whiteness is punctuality, whiteness is, you know, concern with, you know,
logic,
work discipline. I don't know, whatever their particular thing that they've discovered recently about it. You know what I mean? It's like extremely literal and specific. And they, exactly as you've just said, they see the religious compulsion to produce clear declarations of faith. You know, it's just like the 39 articles, but for woke. It's like, this is what we believe. You know, if you don't subscribe to these particular points of doctrine, you are in profound error, and you deserve to be treated harshly as a heretic. But as you say, no, but this isn't how abolitionists behave to you at all. Instead, they've said this weird thing where they've said, you've somehow blasphemed unforgivably, but we can't tell you how. And that is extremely strange. And I mean, I'm not going to just ramble on this. I'll just say one more thing quite quickly. That is just to say, you know, maybe this is a really interesting transitional symptom. Maybe the fact that they can the coercive apparatus of whatever witch finding is being executed to a degree that of an intensity that's almost unbelievable, and yet it's not willing to publicly declare its principles, or, you know, to actually make some doctrinal statement, is this weird combination of a massive lack of confidence combined with this also uncompromised zealotry. And this is like a new phase of things that we haven't really we're just obviously seeing now with this. I mean, it almost makes you nostalgic for the point where they would nail their principles to the wall. And
Right. It was
even
easier
if you
to
think their
laugh at
principles
it.
are
Yeah.
insane, you
Yeah.
know what they're actually asking.
Could that be why it's considered sensitive data? Because if they were to say it out loud, they know that they would be subject to public ridicule because they're that far just so far removed from the consent of the governed or the possibility of some general will.
This is so much the right question to ask, and it takes you on this confusing spiral. Can it be that Amazon, which has this extremely enviable total monopoly on a whole range of like publishing and distribution activities, be so gone in religious zealotry that it would take this path that of holding on to the religious zealotry, even as it recognizes that this is no longer publicly avowable. I mean, that's there's a level of craziness here that just keeps getting deeper and deeper.
But I appreciate the degree to which you've been flabbergasted here, because it's a breath of fresh air being surrounded by theory people and radicals or post radicals, post militant types of people who are all so numb to it, or maybe purporting themselves to be realists to such an extent that this is all just par for the course. And I'm like, no, but I think that there's something new and remarkable in this development. And so, first of all, thank you for I don't know. I feel it feels nice to hear from anyone else, especially you though, that yes, this is a thing. This is weird. And then also, and not just weird, but also fruitful for inquiry. Like this is worth thinking deeper about. This is worth taking your tools of theory and get to work. Let's think deeper about what does this say about our moment? Because that's the volume itself was already doing that about the assassination. What is it that we can tell now about where we are in history? What kind of an era are we entering, given the fact that it was normal to hear people cheering on the assassination of a political rival? And one who is, by the way, like the one who is most mainstream and milquetoast when it comes to the Zoomer side of Republican politics. There's no one more mainstream.
You cannot talk about
milquetoast
this without upsetting your consumers. I mean, I absolutely love this. Actually, I love that statement. I think that deserves to become world historic. In fact, maybe. I need it repeated, the exact wording of that thing. It would
which part?
The thing about where they said it would upset our consumers. Well, what was the exact wording of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Anne, if you have
the initial
dissatisfying customer experience.
Dissatisfying customer experience.
I think honestly, hold on.
There's something perfect about that. There's something perfect. This is kind of post-Orwell perfection of just, it is defining where we are, apparently, in a way that is so. None of us could have come up with that, could we? I mean, none of us could have come up with that phrase. It had to come from there. It had to be a discovery, because it's so perfectly weird. It's so sinister. It's so obviously dishonest. It's so drenched in history and this exact moment of history in a way that none of us could have guessed before it being uttered.
I have the exact wording here in front of me from the initial. This was an email from 12 days ago on November 1st. They said, "Hello, thank you for the submission of the following title on the left's response to Charlie Kirk, an intellectual reflection on the cultural significance of Kirk's assassination by Slavoj Žižek, Anne Snellgrove, McKerracher, Edward Remus, Michael Tracy, et cetera, et cetera." They go through the list of other author names. And just a quick pause. The fact that Žižek, gifted us something that he had written about the case, it's nice as a signal booster or whatever when you're putting an anthology out, and he's got a great piece in there. But in terms of world historic value, this is because it has Žižek, who's like one of the lead, cultural critics, we could say. And then Michael Tracy, he's not exactly a mainstream journalist, but he's well known, right? Because it's got Michael Tracy and Žižek in it. It's actually like, this is not something where people can say, oh, it's a bunch of whatever, nobodies just threw together a bunch of pieces. Like, without reading the pieces, you could assume it's just a bunch of nobodies who threw together some slop. I think anybody who reads it will see that there's some real deep original stuff going on in there. But no, it's actually got a couple of very famous people being held back here.
Would feel that they could just squash those names is just
right.
I mean, how many times am I going to be able to get away with saying amazing? But it's really extraordinary. It's really extraordinary.
Okay, and so then the rest of the quote goes, based on our review, we won't be accepting your submission for publication because the book might result in a disappointing customer experience. For additional information, you can refer to our terms and conditions here.
Disappointing
customer
experience. I mean, I would hope the takeaway, there was a lot more we could have talked about. And, a lot of it is, we've touched on things briefly and been fast, but really what's going on in that expression, a disappointing customer experience, is the thing to just revolve around thoughtfully. Because I think it's like the crucial thing that is pretending to be an economic statement. It's pretending to express class interests. It's as if Amazon is saying, as an agency driven by bourgeois class interests, we have to reject this project because it would compromise our fundamental drive towards profit maximization. And we all know, everyone who hears this knows that is utter bullshit. It's completely unbelievable. There's no way anyone who is not completely insane could take that at face value.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just on a pedestrian level, it's obviously an insulting lie, but in being a lie, it points you towards, well, what is actually happening there? Because it's clearly not. It's clearly not a kind of economic decision. And it's interesting that it has to position itself as an economic decision. It has to pretend it's in drag. It's in paleo-Marxist drag. in a way that's just should be comical to everyone. I suspect will be comical to everyone.
Now this is where, I don't want to start something new, but I just have to. So going into this, one of the big things I had about the cathedral was specifically like the relationship between capital as AI, which is one of your most generative ideas, I think, and really one of your contributions to the whole conversation about artificial intelligence. Capital, capital has this intelligence, right? The idea is that the cathedral goes against that intelligence. It tries to patch things up and slow things down and change the direction of the movement of capital. But what we have, and then of course we have here like this, oh, well, it would be bad for capital is kind of the subtext of that email. It'd be bad for the customer. Yeah. Well, isn't it interesting here that when people aren't bothered by this and they go, oh, it's probably not even a person, it's probably not even like a rule, it's probably just AI, all of a sudden AI is being used not just as like a fetish, but also as like a concern terminating cliche. It's almost like, oh, yeah, well, there's no one at the wheel. It's just AI. And what does that mean for a world where, it's a bureaucracy, a sprawling Kafkaesque bureaucracy, but nobody could even get mad at any of the functionaries in it because, well, AI is the thing that's driving it now.
Yeah. No, that's an extremely interesting comment because it like you say, it's basically is assuming a capital AI identity. And, I say it's in capitalist drag, it's in AI drag. It's AI pretending, drag. It's pretending to be, there's total interchangeability. It's pretending to be either capitalist axiomatics playing out mathematically, or it's pretending to be an AI algorithm playing out mechanically. And of course, it's neither of those. I mean, look, I know I'm radicalizing from my earlier stage, but I'm going to say, of course, it's neither of those. Of
course, it's what?
Of course, it's neither of those things.
Oh, okay.
If they're even separate, it's not. Capital equals AI is not writing that email, or if it is, it's because it's slaved to something completely different. It's simply, it couldn't be an algorithm that defective, and it couldn't be profit motive understood so defectively. Neither of those are possible. And if it was either of those, why would it not just say what the rule is? I mean, the whole thing about an algorithm, in its reductive sense, is it just cranks out stuff according to the rules. It doesn't say, I can't tell you what the rules are. You just have to accept there are rules and you've broken them, but they're a secret. I mean, what is that? That's something so pathological that AI hasn't got there yet. AI hasn't got to the point it can be that psycho.
AI and drag.
No, it's something is hoping you will think it's now. It's an amazing thing. It's this inverted, like inverted Turing test, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's not an AI trying to get you to believe it's human. It's something coming out of the cathedral trying to persuade you that it's an AI.
Right.
It's complete inversion.
Well, see, that's
The most surreal way possible.
yeah, in the most surreal way possible. That was my concern last year for the intro to Nick Land class. At the end of it, that was what I raised, was like, how will this not become the sort of dominant ideology of people who don't want to have to be responsible for the decisions that they're making in public office? How will this not be this? Oh, well, it's the intelligence of the system. It's so far beyond us. How will it not be like the new, oh, the market knows best, right? Which is sort of the neoliberal way, which is like, hey, well, we can't argue with that. It's like, well, oh, AI is just so intelligent. We just have to go with it. It's so complicated, guys. But of course, there's people there. It's people who are using this so that they don't have to be pegged as somehow responsible or capable of doing anything otherwise.
Yeah, it's extremely paradoxical and peculiar. It really is. I mean, I'm now fascinated whether anyone who understands what's happened to you guys with this is not mystified by it, if they're willing to think about it. It's, I think it takes us full circle back to this whole like Kabbalah discussion right at the start. Like, of course, you can just think, look, I can't think about that because it's too gone. It's too weird. If I really thought about it, it would just blow my picture of the world totally to pieces. And I think that this story is like that. It's like, if you just really think about what the hell is going on there, it's just everything starts shredding and the walls start melting, and it's like, what the hell is happening? And not everyone's going to be willing to go there for sure, but I think a lot of people will. This is a data point, I think, a really great data point.
I think that's it. That's the wrap, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it was always a pleasure.
Awesome.
Yeah. Hey, can we take the transcript of this and put it in the Kirk anthology?
Well, what are you going to do with that anthology now?
I think I want to milk this a little bit longer. What would be nice is, I mean, here's the thing. I already sent an email to like every news outlet I could think of that was mainstream or alternative, like literally. And the most interested one besides the Epoch Times was the Washington Post. And the Washington Post said, yeah, submit something that's like 700 words long about this. We might publish it as an op-ed. And so I did, same day. And I said, hey, here's the first draft. Let me know what you think. And then they were like, oh, not interested. And it's interesting because Jeff Bezos owns Amazon and the Washington Post. And I was already kind of like, oh, wouldn't that be cool if the only news outlet that actually says something about it is the one that's owned by Bezos? But instead they were like, nope, not interested.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. I heard the Epoch Times yesterday, they said that they're interested. But I hope it doesn't just become a thing where it's like fringe right-wing media takes it up. It's like I also, emailed like the Intercept, but also like the Cato Institute and like the ACLU.
What does, like, obviously, as you know, I'm not a Žižek guy, but obviously it's interesting playing things from his side. I mean, what does he think about this?
He said,
I don't know enough about him to know what his whole model of this would be. And my prejudice model is that he would be inclined to say, oh, this is like the bourgeoisie. Up to
yeah. Right. No, so I sent him the thing telling him about what happened, and his response was, and I quote, "Thanks, really. We see now what censorship is." Right? Like that's
okay, that's helpful.
yeah.
In fact, we don't see what it is. In fact, we are, after 3 hours, even more confused about what it is than we were 3 hours ago.
Right. When I told them, I said, hey, I think that this is probably newsworthy. We should see about signal boosting this because we don't want to give up on publishing this through Amazon. In fact, I'd like to stick to this and use it as an opportunity to first of all, signal boost the anthology. And second of all, signal boost the what is going on here, right? Like the question, what is this?
Yeah, for sure.
I think
people should be interested.
Yeah. And so it's like, I think Tucker Carlson should want to talk about this. I think Joe Rogan would be interested in this. Of course, there's like, how do you actually get a message across to such people, right? But with Žižek, it's like, I don't think he's got a direct way of messaging those people, but I know he does have a direct line to Piers Morgan, who's gotten really popular on the internet now. And it's like, yeah, I would talk to Piers about this. I think that this is definitely newsworthy. And I think Piers would think so too,
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think the quality of text that you have, it's short, but those emails you've got from them are really just world historic quality. I honestly think so. Like, they're up there with Orwell's best. So any way of just getting those out into the public domain, I think it's doing something really important, actually.
Yeah. So, in the worst case scenario, we'll publish this with the only competitor, which isn't as big as Amazon, but it's called Lulu, and it does have the possibility of getting it onto the shelves in Barnes and Nobles, which is kind of cool. But like I said, I want to be a stickler and just kind of hype this up and kind of just keep being like, what the hell is happening here? And to me, it's a little eye-opening, the fact that most of the people who follow us, like, instead of being upset about this, are like, well, just publish through some indie publisher. It's just like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm glad you understand. I'm sorry, but indie publishing is not, you're telling me to deal with some middleman. Like, they don't understand the value of direct publishing when they say that shit.
I think that people have to also understand, like, what Amazon is. Like, if this is telling us something about Amazon, it's telling us something really important. And just to say, oh, well, forget it. I mean, no, like, sorry, this is, Amazon is like freaking huge, you know what I mean? It's like, if you're saying, oh, like, there's some crazy shit going on in China, oh, well, that's just China. Like, no, sorry. It's like, you have to deal with this shit. For sure.
Yeah.
Like, how people have, it's partly like, Amazon can't be allowed to get away with that level of just absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
It just can't. I mean, it's gotta, there's gotta be some kind of answerability to this, accountability.
Right.
Like the people have spontaneously, through their catalactic decisions, entrusted you as the monopolistic publishing organ of the world, the English speaking world at the very least. And, and with some responsibility comes with that. You can't just send these cryptic, oh, well, your little email saying, like, we're not even going to tell you what you've done wrong, but you're being spanked and we hope you're going to correct your behavior. Like, what is that?
Yeah, what is it, guys? Like, help us understand a little bit more. No, that'd be sensitive data. Sorry. That's sensitive data. What? You mean the part that is on your rule sheet is sensitive? What are you talking about?
Yeah, just tell me what your rule sheet is saying.
Yeah, it's line 32. It's line, literally tell us the line that you're pointing at. And they're like, no, you should be able to figure it out. And it's like, I literally can't, because I can't be sure. Is it his name? Is it just literally his name? Like, there was somebody at a publishing conference last week. One of our fellow travelers was at a publishing conference, and they were talking to KDP people, and somebody high up in KDP was like, oh, it's just guaranteed, like anything related to Charlie Kirk after the assassination, it's just been banned. And then that person told us that, like, it's just like, well, there you go. And I'm like, what are you talking about? There you go. That doesn't,
like,
what?
After the Kennedy assassination, it's like, yeah, don't mention the fact that Kennedy's been assassinated. People,
yeah, what? It's like, is that the new, like, the emperor doesn't have any clothes is saying that Kirk was assassinated? What are you talking about? How in the world? How in the world could that be what's that shadow ban? No, that's ridiculous. That's insane. The whole internet is talking about it. Everyone's talking about it. Yeah. You're saying that no discourse about the thing that everyone is talking about is allowed on the only like direct publishing service.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, there's a bunch of like, it is an actual monopoly right now. And there's
no, this is crucially true. It's an actual monopoly.
Yeah.
It's been entrusted to be the actual monopoly on publishing. And it's behaving so weirdly. I mean, I haven't heard stuff about like Blue Sky or any of these platforms that are just like, hey, we're weird leftists, where we don't follow the rules. I mean, I've not heard anything about those guys that comes close to them.
Oh.
So it's just gone. It's absolutely gone. Yeah.
All right. Well, we got to be gone now. So, yeah, thanks, Nick. This has been awesome.
Yes, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. Take care.
Guys. Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Whether you're new or you've been around for a while thinking about getting involved here at TU as an actual member, now is the time. As we approach the new year, 2026 is going to be really, really cool. Not only am I going to unveil my super secret project, but until then, what I can tell you about is that, one, there's going to be a Theory 101 course where I'm teaching thinkers such as Marx and Heidegger, Lacan, Baudrillard, Bourdieu, etc. On the other side, I'm also teaching through the course of a seminar, which is a lot more collaborative, and I'm bringing in a lot of great guest lectures and expertise, outside help, a course on stewardship
and home economics that's going to be deeply rooted in practice on the one side, but also the liberal arts canon itself, right? Classical education used to teach you how to be a gentleman, or how to be like a woman who's competent and actually knows how to do things. This seems to have been lost. Nowadays, you're told that there's no difference between men or women, or that men and women can do each other's roles. Maybe there is something to that, right? This is something for you to navigate in your own home. But the fact is, there's a lot of skills that have been lost. Skills that used to be ones that all women knew are now skills lost to the annals of time, as are a lot of the skills that men used to know. And so really this course on stewardship and home economics is about getting our philosophical and practical roots in the soil of the canon and the soil of the actual earth, building ourselves lives. I'm going to be building an actual home next year. People in this seminar will actually get to see me go from the blueprint stage to the actual finished product. Okay, that's pretty exciting. But you also could be developing blueprints for your own future home, right? I know all these people who are like, oh, the law of attraction, all you have to do is intend it and eventually it'll manifest. Yeah, but you also have to actually get out like a pencil and paper and put in the work of making the blueprints and figuring out how much everything's going to cost and where that money's going to come from. There might be places that money comes from that are unexpected, but you also have to be developing your own plans. I want to see you go from dwelling in an apartment to living on your own land, living in a house that you built, if you want to. If you don't want to, maybe you just want to have a garden, right? That's awesome. We're going to have a master gardener actually as a part of this course, helping you think about how to plan your garden or farm for 2026. So really home economics using Xenophon and Socrates, and this rich history of all these great works telling us ways of being a competent human being, stuff that we've been robbed from or robbed of, combined with, on the other side, Theory 101, just learning the basics of Marx, Heidegger, I was going to say Freud and Foucault. The works, guys, the works. We're doing it all. We're doing it all. Theory, practice, philosophy, critique. Let's get going. The way you can do that is by becoming a member. Become a member at Theory Underground at any of the 3 tiers, and you'll have access to the basics, to the attendance of these monthly meetings. But also, if you were to sign up at the higher tiers, that's how you get access to the advanced writing courses, to the speech courses. If you're interested in giving presentations, if you're interested in writing stuff that could get published in Underground Theory, if you want to do that kind of stuff, tier 2 at the minimum. But tier 3 is where we work with you on your project, whether that be a thesis or a book. Want to write your first book? That's what I'm here to help you do in 2026. All right, that's what I got. Hope to see you. Sign up soon.